Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a beautiful winter night. It's kind of the Ides of January, not quite, but these times where we're in between the Vikings getting kicked out of the playoffs and the baseball season starting, and the Wild are in a downward spiral. So we know we're in January, and the Winter Carnival is about to begin. So we're very excited for everything that's happening. But we're really happy that everyone's come out tonight to have a conversation as we continue to explore the possibilities of the redevelopment of the Midway site, including, not the least of which, of course, is the opportunity to bring Major League Soccer to the site in a new stadium that can be integrated with the community and really serve and benefit the community. It has been since November 30th that we had the first of the community meetings just across the freeway there. We've had some great opportunity for feedback. We've had great opportunities for people to be able to work the tables and offer input. The Community Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committees have been busy doing their work, and we're just so grateful for all the members of the committee. For those members of either Technical Advisory Committee or the Community Advisory Committee that are here, could you please just stand up and be recognized and thanks for your efforts and your... We appreciate that. So we're going to have several presentations here tonight. We're going to hear first from Jonathan Sage Martinson, who is our Planning and Economic Development Director, talking about the new Midway Jobs Work Group. We've heard consistently and persistently, first of all, that this is a great opportunity to create jobs in the area, but also that there are a lot of existing jobs and businesses. And we want to be very thoughtful about how we incorporate the existing businesses into the future of the site. I know that Rick Beardorf, who is here, I don't know if we're going to hear from you a little bit later on or not, but had a great meeting this afternoon to really, I think, reassure folks that there is a place for the businesses that are in the site now into the future. And as a matter of fact, we have more opportunities, not less. And so we're very excited about that. Sometimes people see a big scary picture on the wall, and sometimes they see pictures that have something else where their current business is. But really, those pictures are conceptual at this point, and there's a lot of process that goes on. But there will be a lot of opportunity to have those questions answered. Then we're also going to hear from Donna and Eric Moll, who has been the chair of the Community Advisory Committee, and they'll provide an overview of what input that we've had to date, and we'll talk about the continuing role of the Community Advisory Committee. And then we'll have an opportunity to hear from Dr. McGuire and the Minnesota United Soccer FC, and from John Clifford, who represents S9 Architecture, with some initial thinking about how the stadium will sit on the site and what are the redevelopment opportunities. And after the presentations, we're going to have an opportunity for additional input. You can see, if you've ever been to one of our planning processes before, the one consistent in all of those, or the couple of consistent things, is we have tables and we have dots. And so tonight we have tables and we have dots, and you'll have an opportunity to go around to the tables and use those dots, but hopefully use them well and in a way that helps inform us. I want to thank, I know that Council Member and Council President Russ Stark is here. Russ, thank you for being here. I don't know if you want to come up and say a few words. We'd welcome a couple words from you. And I don't know if I saw any other council members here. Jane Prince, yes, Jane, our newest council member. Jane, where are you? Jane, thank you for being here. We appreciate that so much. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Russ, and then Russ will turn it over to Jonathan to continue the program. But thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. As I've said before, and as I said at the November 30th meeting, this is a really, really incredible opportunity for this area, for the city of St. Paul, for this region, and for the state of Minnesota. We're going to do it right. We're going to move it forward, and we are going to seize the moment to bring the world's game to the Midway area of the city of St. Paul. So thank you all for participating. Russ.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be brief. I know my colleague, Councilmember Dai Tao, whose ward the site is in, wanted to be here tonight as well, and he may yet come. As the council member who actually lives closest to the site, I live just 2 blocks north of University on Charles, literally a couple blocks from the shopping center. I have a lot of personal interest in what's going on here, and I know many of you do as well. A lot of you live in the neighborhood, are really interested in what's going to happen there, what's going to happen with the existing businesses, what's the plan for the future. I'm just really excited at the opportunity for us to all kind of think and dream and provide some input into that future, because it is our neighborhood, it's our community, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to see some of the things happen in our community that we would like to see, and turn some of those fears and hopes into positive reality. So thank you all for being here tonight. I look forward to the presentation myself, and look forward to the work moving ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jonathan Sage Martinson. As the mayor said, I'm the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the city. The topic I'm going to touch on briefly tonight is the Snelling-Midway Jobs Work Group, which is a group that we just launched today, actually, with a first meeting of all of our partners. And this is important because this site, this Snelling-Midway site, has long been an important job center and service center for the city and certainly for the immediate neighborhood. And we hope it is even more important job center and provider of services as the redevelopment occurs here around the full 35 acres. So we want to be thoughtful about how we can help with that transition, how we can support the existing businesses there, the existing employees there, and how we can even bring more jobs to the site. The city has a history of doing this kind of coordinated approach around jobs where we've had major redevelopment. Recently, the task force that's working on planning for the Ford site, for example, pulled together a jobs work group that looked at what are the targeted jobs that we might recruit to that site as it redevelops. The city also worked with a number of other partners as the change happened along the Green Line, and we went both through construction and redevelopment there to think about how we could best, as a private and public organization, support the businesses there, both during construction but also during the redevelopment. So sort of building on those examples, we're pulling together a number of partners to focus on this site, the Snelling-Midway site, and we're going to focus on 4 things, both business and job retention on the site and in the immediate area, any employment transitions, business and job attraction. Again, we're hoping the site will have even more jobs than it has today after redevelopment occurs. So what can we do collectively as a community to help recruit those jobs there? And then what can we do to support local employment on the site, both construction, because we anticipate a lot of construction will happen, but also for long-term jobs. This group is being put together by the City of St. Paul, but has lots and lots of partners. As these things usually do, this is an example. I think there were 20-some agencies at the meeting today to kick off and get coordinated around this work. But you see the Chambers of Commerce, the Port Authority, we have labor representatives, state agencies, the Asian Economic Development Association, the African Economic Development Solutions Group are just some examples of the groups that are coming together to participate in this group. Really, this is a timeline of the work of the group. Really, there's 2 things that we hope the group will do. One is be coordinated so that to the extent there's businesses in the area who are weathering construction or thinking about their future, there's a coordinated set of agencies that you can contact any one of us. We'll connect you into the network and make sure you get answers and the kind of support you need. But secondly, also to think about that long-term future for the site, what kind of jobs might be there. There'll be a bit of a research and a report component as well. And you see the time frame here in terms of draft report in March, and then the report out to the CAC and to the Planning Commission eventually. So that's a little bit about the process and the product of the group. Ellen Mueller from the Department of Planning and Economic Development is leading this group up, and Ellen is here, sitting over here in the yellow sweater. Afterwards, when there's time for input, there's 2 tables about this jobs focus group, and Ellen will be at one, I'll be at another. So feel free to talk to us then. If you have questions about the group or about the work of the group, Ellen is probably your best contact, and her contact information is here. So we look forward to talking with you more, and reporting out the work of the group to the Community Advisory Committee, to the Planning Commission over the next couple of months. So with that, I think Donna and Eric are going to come up and talk about the Community Advisory Committee. Mayor's good.
No PowerPoints. I just wanted to make sure I was remiss in not introducing Representative Tim Mahoney, who is here as well and has been closely following this project. So Representative Mahoney, thank you so much for being here as well. And with that, Donna and Eric.
Well, thank you. My name is Eric Mulho. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Community Advisory Committee, and I just wanted to take about a minute or two here to let you know about our work. This obviously is a major development project that is going to impact multiple neighborhoods. That's not called the Midway for nothing. We're in the middle of a lot of different neighborhoods, a lot of different residential neighborhoods and business neighborhoods, and of course in the middle of the city. And any project of this size and scope means some changes for those of us who live and work here in the heart of St. Paul. And so the mayor has asked a group of neighbors and leaders to participate in the Community Advisory Committee. And our role is to serve as the formal voice of the neighborhood and of people who live and work right here in the heart of St. Paul. Many of us are wearing our anointed name tags tonight, and so if you see folks who have the typed up name tags, I encourage you to make sure that you're sharing your suggestions, your ideas, your concerns, your questions with them. Those are your neighbors. Those are folks who are volunteering to participate and to provide our feedback from the neighborhood to the architects, to the team, to the city, to all of the formal processes that are going to be underway here over the next few months of planning. So our role is to listen, is to learn, and to hopefully to represent all of you as our neighbors and as our friends as this process moves forward. Our group meets about every other Thursday. Our next meeting will be next Thursday afternoon from 4 to 6. We meet at the American Bank building, which is right on the corner. It's in the site, right on the corner of Snelling and University. All of the information that we receive from the city and at our meetings is posted on the site website, which is stpaul.gov/Snelling, or if you just type Snelling into the search engine there, it'll take you right there. So everything that we do and everything that we've received is available to any of the neighbors or any of your friends and colleagues as well. And finally, before asking Donna to fill you in on the content of our work, I would also simply say that everybody here tonight has a network, has a group of individuals, your church, your school, your neighborhood, that you can share this information back to. And that's how we are going to get effective community engagement, and that's how we can continue to hear from our business owners and our neighbors, is when each of us is sharing the information that we have and letting our neighbors know what's going on so that we can continue to represent you well and we can continue to lift up the voices of the neighborhood as this process moves forward. So very honored and pleased to be here tonight, and I'll invite Donna Drummond forward to share with you some of the content of the work that we've been doing on the Community Advisory Committee.
Great, thanks so much, Eric. I'm Donna Drummond. I'm the Director of Planning in the city's Department of Planning and Economic Development. And I wanted to just give you a few highlights from the discussions by the Community Advisory Committee and also input that we got at the November 30th public meeting, which was our first public meeting. I don't know how many of you were there. There was a big snowstorm that night. Thankfully, it's not a snowstorm tonight, but still cold to be getting out at night. This is one of the things that's been happening to get community input is great work by the Union Park District Council. They just issued a report and approved it in early January, which lays out some principles and concerns by the community that they've gleaned through a variety of methods. They were interviewing people at Big Top Liquor, at Skyline Tower, just getting a lot of great input, and so their information is available on our website that Eric mentioned, so stpaul.gov/Snelling, and all the things I'll be going over briefly here are available on that web page. So at the November 30th meeting, things that we heard, we asked about community uses. There was a lot of interest in youth soccer, concerts, and festivals. We asked a question about affordable tickets. What would you consider an affordable ticket range? This is the primarily the responses we got. Most people were in those categories. Public open space, a lot of interest in patio seating, music, ideas like outdoor movies and farmers markets. We asked about getting there. How do people think folks would get to the stadium for games? And people think there will be a mix of ways to get to the site and the stadium. Transit, bike, walk, driving, equally used. For jobs on the site, a lot of interest in local hiring and small minority and women-owned businesses getting a fair shake at some of those jobs. Sustainability, looking at, again, multimodal transportation. That's kind of a plannerese term to talk about making sure that all the ways that people get around are being facilitated, walking and biking and transit as well as vehicles. A lot of interest in being sustainable, transit-oriented, creating an urban village, a real new neighborhood here, and recognizing that this place will have a regional identity. So some of the hopes and concerns we heard, hopes, I think, for a really walkable, safe area, interest in bringing forth all the various cultures that are in the city, serving as a town center, things for everyone to enjoy, and concerns that as this process goes forward that only a few people would be served or benefit. Traffic and parking, of course, are of concern. How does that get handled? And safety. We heard some concerns about crossing University and Snelling and using the transit platform, so how can we make that safer? We asked a question about public life and community character, and people really felt this needs to be a great place every day of the year. So in the winter and the summer, during game days, non-game days, and these are some of the ideas that came forth as part of that. So, you know, farmers markets, festivals, small cafes, public art, pedestrian-only areas. Maybe we would have some convertible streets where the street is closed during a soccer event so that there's plenty of room for people exiting and entering the stadium, that type of thing. And really creating a place where people want to linger, so it's not just coming to the game and leaving, but being able to take advantage of all the great things that will be here. Design and programming, these are the feedback we got initially on the things that, that we've seen so far, and really excited about creating a very walkable area that feels truly urban. So I think with that, then we'll turn it over to Dr. McGuire, and he'll start off the next part of our presentation.
Hello, my name is John Clifford from S9 Architecture. I'm going to start the presentation, and then Dr. McGuire is going to come in and talk a little bit about the stadium, and then I'm going to go back to the master plan. So my firm has been retained by Snelling-Midway, and we've been working closely with Dr. McGuire and Populous Architects, who's designing the stadium, to do a master plan for the Snelling-Midway redevelopment. And on this site, we had a lot of benefit because the city had done, excuse me, several previous studies for what to do with the site, what were the highest and best uses considering that it was at a public transit node, and got a lot of community input along the way. So we started with that as a basis, and then we've been working with the Community Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee, taking in new input on what vision the community would like to see here, given the previous studies that had been done on the site, given some of the infrastructure that is around the site, and now given the fact that we would like to construct a 20,000 seat Major League Soccer stadium here. So just orienting everybody, and this presentation was given to the Community Advisory Committee. Some of you I recognize from previous meetings, so you've seen this before. We hope to unveil the master plan in the coming weeks. We're still working with all of the stakeholders, all of the analyses that we've been doing on the site in terms of infrastructure to come up with an appropriate master plan. So the site is obviously, everybody knows, is almost right in the middle between St. Paul and Midway on the University corridor, which is experiencing resurgence since the Green Line has opened, and now the new BRT on Snelling is under construction, making Snelling and University a major public transit node. So there is the Green Line, the BRT, and our site is in the red. And then it's a site that right now is what I would call a negative space surrounded by vibrant neighborhoods. it would be very difficult and probably unpleasant to walk across the site in a north, south, east, west direction to get from one neighborhood to the other. So one of our goals is to create a new neighborhood that mends that fabric and knits these neighborhoods back together. It's an aerial of the site. Let me see where this laser is. Oops, sorry. Which one is the, I don't have my glasses, I'm sorry. Okay, there you go. This is the existing shopping center right here, and it's comprised of about 24.5 acres outlined in this L-shaped parcel. And then the Met Council parcel right here is 9.8 acres, so it's a total site area of about 34.5 acres. Can everybody hear me without the microphone? I can talk louder. All right, I just can't see the screen. These are some photographs of the existing site conditions from each of the corners. Most of you are familiar with what's on the site. It's highly underutilized. The south side is mostly the bus depot and vacant land, and then the shopping center with a large expanse of service parking. Some other site pictures. The site again. And what we're looking at right now, although we don't have the master plan finalized, is the approximate location for the stadium, which would be in this area of green right here on the south side of the existing shopping center up against St. Anthony and I-94, approximately in the middle of the site between Snelling and Pascal.
We've tried to lay out here a couple of slides to just give you some of the principles that have been guiding us and are being incorporated actually into the ultimate, we think, ultimate product and situation and environment that we're creating. And this slide just lays out the thing that John already mentioned. There are a lot of inputs already, and these are ongoing. Some of them date back months. Some of them are more recent, but we've tried to engage various constituents who all have interest and inputs and viewpoints that will be beneficial to achieving ultimately the optimum product. And these include people and groups that are interested in soccer, groups that are interested in an area they can live in, people that are interested in an area that they can go visit, they want to participate in, and all of these, and then of course future users, all of these are incorporated into some of the thinking that we have. So ultimately there's really, as in terms of discussions that people have, it seems to break down into two thought processes. What happens on a game day? What happens on the rest of the time? And actually, I think they're pretty confluent in that we want the same things. We want a great area where people can live, visit, have lots of things to do, not be dependent just on an event, but also not be confounded when there is an event. And I think as we move forward, you'll see that we believe there's a good way to accomplish that. So obviously on game days, alluded to earlier, the big issues are how does traffic flow? How do you park people? How do you get people there? How do you get people away from there? What do they do the rest of the time? How do you manage things like light and noise in the area and the impact? And also, how do you put on a great event? On non-game days, then, what happens? What can you do to make this really a vibrant community every day that in fact benefits from what comes with having a professional sports facility that is well designed and consistent with the neighborhood and the area? Couple of things that have been driving this thinking. We look a lot at international as well as domestic soccer stadiums, which are different than other stadiums. I'm going to show you some pictures. We also look at this concept popularized by the urban village. Interactive involvement where communities exist or coexist with facilities. And in that case, I, just for educational purposes, thought it would be worthwhile for people to see what some soccer stadiums look like around the country. So these are Major League Soccer, MLS soccer stadiums that exist in America today. There's 20 or so of them. And by and large, I would say they're architecturally pretty pedestrian. This is one of the better known ones. It's down in Sporting Kansas City, opened up 4 or 5 years ago, was designed by Populous. It's been a huge success. This one over here is in Columbus, Ohio, sits on the fairgrounds. It was the first soccer-specific stadium built in America. It was built by the Hunt family 20 years ago. Here are a couple of others. This is arguably one of the architecturally most attractive and classic ones. This is Red Bull Stadium in Harrison, New Jersey. But you can see various fields. And then here are a couple more recent stadia. This is the plan now being put out for Sacramento, which is hoping to get an MLS franchise. Actually, probably the predominant party with whom we in Minnesota competed for this last slot. This is a new stadium being proposed as a second soccer stadium in Los Angeles, California, for the new team that will start playing in 2018. The existing team plays here in Carson, also in Los Angeles, at what's now is called StubHub, built by AEG a few years ago. And this is the design being constructed right now in Orlando, Florida, for a team that started last year. Here are international stadia. And this is just a selection, and you can see a different feel. And by and large, when you watch TV on Saturday or Sunday morning in the Premier League games, or you watch the Olympics and the great stadiums, you see things that look more like this. Frankly, architecturally more interesting. Some of them are very large. Here's in Johannesburg, 94,000. But here is in the United Arab Emirates, just completed 25,000. And here are 5 new stadia that are being constructed or beginning for construction, just recently announced. The one on the left for Chelsea in London, and on the right in Lyon, France, both designed by Herzog and de Meuron, who were the principal architects for the new, or the recent addition to the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. Here is Tottenham, also in London, which is a redo done by Populous. And then here is a stadium in Romania, and then another one in Russia. So you can see the thing. I show these in part to suggest that if you want to conjure up what our thinking is, it is more like these kind of facilities that are forward-looking, more modern, more conducive to the future than some of these others, like what you just saw from Columbus, Ohio. What we're considering and costing out and designing around right now is a stadium that would be 18,500 to 20,000 seats, guests, probably functioning for 25 to 35 soccer events a year. That would include non-professional, such as the state high school championships, hopefully, Minnesota Youth Soccer Association, some of the local soccer clubs that have big tournaments, Hmong, Oromo, Somali, where we could have a championship game and utilize these facilities, but a great place. Adjacent green spaces, this is where the combination with what Snelling-Midway is looking at in the city, we're all thinking about how do we make this something more than just a freestanding entity sitting in the middle. Something that, as I said earlier, is beautiful and inspiring and complements as well as elevates the neighborhood. And something that obviously needs to be accessible and approachable, and that is both from an aesthetic standpoint as well as an economic standpoint. A couple of pictures just to help you gauge size. I know for a fact that people think professional stadium, they say, oh my gosh, I've seen these behemoths. They don't fit in the neighborhood. I would argue that they can fit in the neighborhood. They see a gentleman saying they can't fit in the neighborhood, but let me just show you a couple designs. So here is something like we have been thinking about with a roof that's not completely closed, and this is laid out against target field. So you can see the distance to the sidelines and the elevation. Here you can see this overlaid against TCF Bank Stadium. Again, smaller, fitting inside. US Bank Stadium, obviously much smaller, and perhaps easier to visualize. Here's Target Center where the Timberwolves play. And you can see that it is lower in height than that, and closer to home, here's XL. So if you think about it, and this is accomplished in part by sinking the field down, so the total elevation can be 70 or 80 feet. And you can see how much narrower it is, still bringing you right in line with the field, and also 10 to 20% lower depending on how it's configured. So this is some of the things that we're thinking about. In the end, what we want to end up with is summarized here. We want to end up with a great facility that serves the sport and in fact represents the cornerstone of this sport in the state for the future. A facility that's great for the players as well as the fans. It brings them into the game. Sitting in an area that increasingly becomes an exciting place to live and work and visit and shop and play with, so to speak. Part of an aggressive, dynamic, and future-looking community, and something that represents a catalyst for continued multi-year improvement in just the area as well as the community overall. So we're pretty confident that we can accomplish that, and that's part of the design, which also then leads into back to Arcade Midway.
Thank you, Bill. So from that, since the stadium is the major component of the redevelopment district, we've been working with Bill and Populous and how to incorporate that into a master plan with some of the other elements that we think are important to the urban village concept and the redevelopment of the overall 35-acre site. So just as the stadium had certain design principles, we're trying to incorporate certain design principles as well. And a lot of these design principles were established through community input, through some of the previous studies that the city had commissioned and others had commissioned for the superblock site. They are take advantage of the transit-oriented development. With the coming BRT line on Snelling and the green line on University, that intersection is poised to be a major hub for redevelopment. Making sure that we have adequate green spaces, that it's a pedestrian-first neighborhood. The second one is amending the street grid in the urban fabric. And in the aerial, you can see where it's a big void surrounded by all these neighborhoods. How can this new development be a neighborhood that knits all the surrounding neighborhoods together, especially based on a transit-oriented development? Emphasizing public open spaces. Bill alluded to that. We want to incorporate large and small spaces of different types and sizes that can be programmed, not just for the stadium on event days, but on non-event days for the community and the uses that we would like to introduce into the redevelopment site, but also for the larger community beyond the development site. Connecting the parks and bike paths to the surrounding community, and we'll look at some diagrams that we're looking at on how to do that. And making sure that whatever public spaces that we create are for four-season use. They're not just a summer-type park or something that's only used for 3 or 4 months a year, that it's something that could be programmed in January and February as well. Mixed use is a very important part of the concepts that we're looking at in terms of the master plan. In order to have a vibrant neighborhood or even a vibrant city, it needs to have a good mix of all types of uses, which could be housing, office, hotel, restaurants and retail certainly. We want to incorporate some of the businesses that are already on the site, the stadium itself, and public and open space. Making sure also that the neighborhood is accessible and open for both day and nighttime uses. It's more of a 24/7 community where people live there. They can go there to shop, play, whatever. And then finally, making sure that the entire development is sustainable, but really focusing on sustainable stormwater management, with St. Paul being a river city and stormwater eventually finding its way into the river. We want to include as many sustainable and innovative ways that we can pre-treat the water and control quality so it benefits the overall watershed. So Jen, you know, when we first start looking at sites, we want to get a feel for what the size is. 34.5 acres is a big piece of land. It's especially a big piece of land in an urban area. But what does that mean? Right now, it has the shopping center on the top half, and the southern half is mostly vacant, save for the bus use. So we overlaid it. And this red line is the outline of the superblock. And it's approximately the size of 12 blocks of downtown St. Paul. And when we saw that, it was kind of eye-opening, because we think, look what that area did in downtown St. Paul and what could be the possibilities here. We're not thinking of recreating downtown St. Paul, but just to see what happens in a space this size very close to the site. So then we went back to some of the previous studies. This graphic is actually from one of the previous studies, where it was really focusing on how to, again, I'm going to use the word knit because it really does make sense here, taking this big superblock and reconnecting it back to the neighborhoods on either side. So the concept that had been studied and agreed upon through community input was trying to create that knitting by reestablishing street blocks with blocks that are more in size to the neighborhood instead of the larger superblock. The superblock right now is about 1,200 feet by 1,200 feet. As I showed you earlier, we're thinking that the stadium site would be here on the south side of the middle of the site, and this shows potential both public transit and pedestrian entries. You clearly have the public transit node at University and Snelling with the BRT and the LRT, but where would other places be for pedestrian entries? Certainly off of University, off of Pascal, and off of Snelling. Probably not as much pedestrian off of St. Anthony because it acts more as a service road. And where would vehicular access be? Vehicular access would probably come off Snelling, off of Pascal, off of University. It's fairly limited because of the light rail. There could be some, but it probably wouldn't have primary. And even off of St. Anthony, it's somewhat limited because of the MnDOT restrictions. So these would be secondary, St. Anthony and University, and the primary would be off Snelling and Pascal. And then looking at how the site might connect into the city bike network, which is growing. So there's bike networks on both sides that could pay, both existing and planned. We see those as primarily coming off of Pascal and Snelling as well, connecting to the east and west, but also the connection down Pascal from north-south. So this was just a graphic. It's not meant to say where we intend the streets or the driveways to be, but it goes back to the idea of breaking down the site in some form so that the blocks that we create are more pedestrian friendly. They start connecting back to the city street grid, and they create development blocks that are more in line with what already exists in the surrounding neighborhoods. And the uses that we're talking about, we left one out, which we have it up here, open space. Office, open space, retail. Retail could involve entertainment, like movies. Certainly the stadium is a component on here. Hotel and residential housing as well. And we want to make sure, again, that the public spaces that we create, the neighborhood that we create, is a neighborhood and spaces for all 4 seasons. These are just some examples of how public spaces can be used in northern cities. In the height of winter, downtown in Rice Park, you have an outdoor skating rink. That's one idea, but there are certainly things in winter, summer, spring, and fall. And then we started looking at what would be the appropriate sizes for an open space if we put them here. So again, we looked to overlays for scale, and we wanted to look locally. So the red line here is the outline of the superblock, the Snelling University superblock, and this is what the size of Mears Park in downtown St. Paul would be. It's about 400 by 400. So again, just to see what that size open space would look like on our development site. And this is one with PV Plaza from Minneapolis. It's a little bit smaller, but as a square, it's probably about the same size. You can see it's 475 by about 250. And then Rice Park, which I mentioned earlier. And it's 430 by 355. So it was kind of eye-opening to see that they were all about the same size. And it gave us a good idea of the scale of what an appropriate public space might be. It might not be the only one, there could be other ones, but one that would have enough civic size to be a community gathering space and could be programmed for 4 seasons. This is one that we included, this is a project I actually worked on in Ottawa, and I included it for several reasons. One is, if you see the size of our site in red, and then you see the development site below, it was almost exactly the same size. The other was, it had a stadium. This happened to be a Canadian Football League stadium instead of a soccer stadium, but it had a stadium. And then it was in the middle of very established, strong neighborhoods in the city of Ottawa. It was a northern city that had to deal with 4 seasons. And they wanted to create an urban village kind of neighborhood within a neighborhood as well. This was their open space, where they had a large plaza here, and this is a ceremonial boulevard that could be closed down for events and game days and other things like that. So just to look at the size of that as well. This is a shot over here. It got built and opened last year. And we also want to think about how these spaces might be programmed, especially when you have a facility that has 20,000 spectators on one day. It's pretty easy to guess how it's going to be programmed on an event day. But what happens on non-event days? And there are more and more facilities that are now in urban environments where the build form around them and the programming around them ensures that that public space is nice space on event and non-event day. So this is at LA Live in LA, even how some streets can work where they can become whole festivals, and then around the Portland Stadium in Oregon, which has really created this whole kind of vibrant neighborhood around it. And then there are other kinds of spaces that we want to look to incorporate. One larger space seems kind of logical given that we have a large facility, but there are all kinds of spaces that make up neighborhoods and cities. So there could be more formal plazas. Other studies have suggested a plaza at the corner of University and Snelling to give users of public transport more room to queue, but also a place to sit on the corner and enjoy spaces like that. And then there could be more softscape. In urban environments, you have what are called hardscape, which could be downtown squares with limited landscaping that take on large public gatherings. But then in order to complete an urban fabric, you need some softer landscape areas. Whoops, sorry about that. That can be large and small. They can be interactive with splash fountains. They can incorporate art. They can be interpretive in terms of landscaping and educational. And then how even some of the urban spaces, public spaces, have some kind of commercial program, but it's still a public space. So these are examples of spaces where there might be outdoor movies in the summer, or a food truck festival in the spring, public art, things like that. And then there are other spaces along public realms, sometimes streets that close down and become pedestrian only, others that might get holiday kiosk events in the winter to enliven that square, or have a cafe in the middle of a park. So we're looking at not just one, but a multitude of different types of public spaces to try and incorporate into the new neighborhood for all of these different uses. We also want to look at streetscapes, not just Snelling and University and Pascal, the streets that currently exist, which could be improved. Snelling, for example, has a 5-foot sidewalk, and now the BRT is going to be built there, and we envision that as a front door to the redevelopment site in the neighborhood. So how can that be transformed more into a boulevard where it can be used and with active uses and be a significant address and interact with the BRT. But then other smaller streets, like this one right here, that give a different kind of scale, that might have limited vehicular traffic. And then how some of the streets can be really pedestrian streets. And these are examples of projects that have been built where streets can transform into outdoor cafes during the summer, where you might just have a pedestrian walkway, where art can be used in a streetscape to try and enliven it at night, or where you just have a quiet street that connects one part of the neighborhood to the other. And then because we're going to have a facility that has large events in it, some of the streets we envision will be closed down during certain event times and other times when we have festivals. What is the best design for that street? So these are some examples of streets that have curbless streets that can morph from being a vehicular traditional street with a pedestrian sidewalk to being totally pedestrian when you have an event, say for a soccer game. And then taking all of that and understanding how we can best incorporate sustainable design, not just into the buildings, but into the public realm and infrastructure that we're creating. And as I said earlier, we're really focusing on, we're incorporating as much sustainable design as we can, but the main focus is for stormwater management. And this could be in layered kind of infrastructure for the stormwater management, stormwater treatment areas, sometimes through landscaping, potentially looking at reclaiming the stormwater to use as irrigation in underground cisterns and things like that in all of the public spaces. That's where we are right now in terms of taking in all of our background study material, and with that we hope to come back to you soon with the overall master plan.
Okay, thanks, John. Now it's time to hear from all of you. We have some topic tables. We have 2 sets of tables, so this half of the room can use the tables that are here. There's 8 topics. Same 8 topics over on this side of the room, so you don't need to be trying to hit all the tables, but try to hit the 8 topics here. The topics include things like example images, which of the images you've seen tonight do you especially like, community character and public life, getting around the site and in the neighborhood, types of uses, jobs and businesses, living in the Midway, stormwater management, and just overall vision and other topics, or anything you want to talk about that isn't covered by one of those topics. So please wander amongst the tables, whatever topic you're interested in. We do have signs for each of the tables so you know what topic it is. There should be somebody at each of those tables to help facilitate input. And I also want to mention that up here we have a table for Union Park, the Snelling Gateway Initiative. They're focused on trying to improve that northwest corner at I-94 and Snelling. So please visit the table up here as well. So thank you for coming, and please visit the tables. Thank you.